From Genghis to Tamerlane, the untold saga of the Mongol horde. What if I told you that one man, born in the wind-swept steppes of Mongolia, unleashed a storm so powerful it reshaped the world for centuries? What if his descendants carved empires from the bones of Europe, traded silk for silver, and turned golden tents into symbols of terror and diplomacy? How did a nomadic warlord become the architect of the largest contiguous empire in history? Why did Slavic cities tear down their own walls in fear of Mongol wrath? What made the Golden Horde both a merchant's paradise and a warrior's nightmare? Once upon a time, in the vast, wind-swept steppes of Central Asia, a man named Genghis Khan, or as you called him, Genghis Khan, close enough for a campfire tale, decided that being a tribal chieftain was too small a gig. He wanted the whole world. So he did what any visionary with a killer instinct and a cavalry of maniacs would do. He united the Mongol tribes, slapped together the most terrifying army the world had ever seen, and went on a conquest spree that made Alexander the Great look like he was playing Risk with his cousins. Genghis's secret sauce? Mobility. His warriors were like ghosts on horseback, mounted archers who could shoot you in the eye while galloping sideways and still have time to loot your pantry. They swept through Asia, the Middle East, and even Europe, leaving behind a trail of stunned cities and very confused chroniclers. In 1227, as Genghis Khan lay dying, probably from exhaustion after conquering half the planet, he made a decision that would shape history: divide his empire into 4 parts, each ruled by one of his sons. It was like slicing up a pizza the size of Eurasia. Now, Jochi, his eldest son, had already passed away, possibly from the stress of being Genghis's heir. So the westernmost chunk went to Jochi's son, Batu Khan. This slice included Central Asia, a hefty chunk of Russia, and parts of Eastern Europe. Batu was about to become the landlord of lands that hadn't even heard of Mongols yet. Batu wasn't just a chip off the old block, he was a full-blown wrecking ball. In 1235, he gathered his troops and began his westward march. First stop, the Bashkirs, a Turkic people who probably thought they were safe on the edge of Eurasia. Spoiler, they weren't. By 1237, Batu had steamrolled into southern Ukraine, having already turned Bulgaria into a Mongol outpost. Then came the big fish, the principalities of Kiev and Rus. Cities like Ryazan, Moscow, and Kiev fell like dominoes. Kiev, once a glittering jewel of Eastern Europe, was sacked so thoroughly that even the rats packed up and left. With Russia under his belt, Batu turned his gaze westward. Poland, Hungary, Austria, each was a target, and each was woefully unprepared. In 1241, the Mongols crushed the Hungarian army at the Battle of Mohi and sent shockwaves through Europe. Vienna was next, and Batu was already sharpening his arrows. But just as he was about to knock on Vienna's gates, fate intervened. Ögedei Khan, the supreme leader of the Mongol Empire and Genghis's 3rd son, died unexpectedly. Batu, ever the loyal grandson, broke off the siege and galloped back east to join the succession drama. Now, Batu could have claimed the title of Great Khan himself. He had the army, the pedigree, and the momentum. But instead, he played the long game and backed his cousin Büyük for the top job. Then he returned to the west and said, "Let's make this official." In 1242, Batu established his capital at Sarai, near the Volga River in present-day Russia. Thus, the Golden Horde was born, a name that sounded like a treasure chest but acted like a battering ram. It was one of the 4 partitions of the Mongol Empire, and it became a dominant force in Eurasia. Loving the clash of Khans and golden conquests? Then don't just watch, join the Horde. Hit subscribe and tap the bell so you never miss a siege, a scandal, or a Silk Road twist. History this wild deserves a front row seat. Make sure it's yours. Once upon a time, in the swirling dust of post-Genghis geopolitics, the Mongol Empire was split like a juicy roast at a warrior's feast. 4 mighty chunks emerged: the Golden Horde, the Blue Horde, the White Horde, and the Black Horde. It was less a color-coded family reunion and more a strategic game of who gets what. Now the Golden Horde, the name itself sparkles like a dragon's hoard. Some say it came from the dazzling yellow tents the Mongol generals pitched during campaigns, like mobile palaces glowing in the sun. Others whisper that Batu Khan himself had a tent so golden it could blind a tax collector. But the Slavic peoples, ever poetic and slightly terrified, may have coined the name to reflect the sheer opulence of Batu's empire. After all, when your conqueror shows up with silk banners, gold-plated saddles, and a treasury that jingles louder than your church bells, golden feels like the right adjective. The Golden Horde wasn't just a smash-and-grab operation, it was a full-blown economic juggernaut. Sure, they looted cities like it was Black Friday in medieval Europe, but they also established trade routes that connected China to the Mediterranean, like Mongol-powered Wi-Fi. They struck deals with merchants, diplomats, and scholars from Persia, Byzantium, and even Venice. Their coinage, pul-sum and dirham, circulated like gossip in a royal court. And their cities, especially Sarai, became melting pots of Kipchaks, Bulgars, Tatars, Kazakhs, Slavs, and Turkic tribes. It was like the United Nations, but with more horses and fewer speeches. In 1255, Batu Khan passed away, probably from exhaustion after terrifying half of Europe. His son Sartok took over, but fate had other plans. He died suddenly, leaving a power vacuum that made Slavic princes twitch with rebellious ambition. The Kievan Rus nobles, sensing weakness, stirred up uprisings like a pot of borscht on a cold day. But the Golden Horde wasn't about to let their empire unravel. Mongol forces rode in with ultimatums so sharp they could slice through stone, and they did. Cities like Ponia and Volia, realizing they'd poked the bear, complied with every demand. They even demolished their own walls, knowing full well that if the Mongols attacked, the population would be turned into a cautionary tale. With Sartak gone, Batu's younger brother, Berke Khan, took the reins. He was no soft-spoken administrator. Berke was a warrior with a mission. He launched campaigns into Poland, Lithuania, and Prussia, making sure Europe never forgot the sound of Mongol hooves. But Berke had a twist. He converted to Islam. This was a seismic shift. Suddenly, the Golden Horde had a Muslim ruler, and that didn't sit well with Hulagu Khan, the Ilkhanate overlord who had just conquered Baghdad in 1258 and killed the last Abbasid Caliph in a manner so brutal it made medieval torture manuals blush. Berke, furious at Hulagu's desecration of Baghdad, declared war. It was the Mongol version of a family feud, except instead of passive-aggressive letters, they used cavalry charges. In 1262, Hulagu tried to invade the Golden Horde through the Caucasus, but Berke's general, the young and brilliant Noyan, launched a surprise attack at the Battle of the Terek River and sent Hulagu packing. Meanwhile, Berke wasn't just fighting wars, he was playing chess with empires. He allied with Baybars, the Mamluk Sultan of Egypt and Syria, forming a Muslim power bloc that made Hulagu sweat under his helmet. Let's rewind to the Battle of the DK River, where the Golden Horde, led by the indomitable Berke Khan and his general Noyan, gave Hulagu Khan a surprise he wouldn't forget. Hulagu had just desecrated Baghdad and was feeling pretty smug. But Berke, fueled by Islamic fervor and Mongol vengeance, sent Noyan to deliver a lesson in humility. The result? Hulagu's forces were routed, and the Golden Horde secured dominance over the Caucasus, like a landlord collecting overdue rent. Georgia and its neighbors soon found themselves under Mongol influence, and Noyan, now the regional boss, consolidated power like a chess master with a cavalry. After Berke and Hulagu exited the stage, one by death, the other by defeat, the Golden Horde saw a brief golden age under Mongu Timur. This guy wasn't just a warrior, he was a merchant's dream. He opened trading colonies in Azov and Kaffa, gave Venice a VIP pass, and told the Russians to let German traders roam free. It was like medieval globalization, Mongol style. But as always, death came knocking. Mongu Timur perished, and the reins passed to Noah Khan, who promptly launched a military campaign from Lithuania to Bulgaria, making Serbia tap out like a wrestler in a chokehold. Despite Noah's death in 1299, the Golden Horde kept swinging. They governed with surprising calm and even used a clever strategy: pit Slavic groups against each other like a medieval reality show. Survivor Rus edition kept the Horde in control while nobles squabbled over who insulted whose grandmother. But peace is a fragile thing. By 1340, internal power struggles began to crack the empire's foundation. And then came the Black Death, like a cosmic sneeze that wiped out farmers, tax collectors, and anyone who knew how to grow wheat. With fewer hands to feed the empire and fewer pockets to fill the treasury, the Golden Horde's economy took a nosedive. In 1359, the Golden Horde turned into a Mongol soap opera. 4 suitors vied for the throne, each claiming to be the rightful Khan. It was like The Bachelor, but with swords and plague. The result? Chaos. Slavic and Tatar factions rebelled, city-states declared independence, and the central government in Mongolia lost contact with its western cousins. By 1370, the Golden Horde was less an empire and more a collection of angry provinces with commitment issues. Just when things couldn't get worse, in rode Tamerlane, a military genius of Turkish-Mongol descent, with a chip on his shoulder and a taste for destruction. Between 1395 and 1396, he annihilated the Golden Horde's armies, razed their cities, and left Sarai looking like a post-apocalyptic postcard. The Horde survived, technically, until 1480, but it was a shadow of its former self, limping along while Russia grew stronger. Ivan III finally kicked them out of Moscow, and the Russian nation began to rise from the ashes of Mongol domination. Between 1487 and 1491, the remnants of the Golden Horde tried one last hurrah, attacking Lithuania and Poland. But Europe had moved on. The Horde was decisively defeated, and in 1502 the Crimean Khanate with Ottoman backup sacked Sarai. The Golden Horde, after 250 years of terror, trade, and transformation, ceased to exist. Though the empire crumbled, its legacy endured. The Mongols reshaped Eurasia through their conquests, diplomacy, and cultural fusion. They connected East and West, spread ideas and technologies, and left behind a blueprint for empire building that echoed through history. Next up, Hulagu Khan, the siege that shook Islam. What happens when a Mongol warlord sets his sights on the heart of the Islamic world? In our next episode, we dive into Hulagu Khan's brutal march to Baghdad in 1258, where libraries burned, rivers ran black with ink, and the last Abbasid Caliph met a fate so bizarre it defies belief. Why did Hulagu target Baghdad? How did the Mongols breach the city's legendary defenses? And what legacy did this catastrophic conquest leave behind? Stay tuned, because the fall of Baghdad is not just a chapter in history. It's a warning, a tragedy, and a turning point that changed the Middle East forever.